The root of all human misbehavior can be analyzed and understood with a series of steps, a 7 step stair step that was first chronicled by a very fascinating man named Dr. Matthew Ferrara in Texas. He is a clinical psychologist, he's a doctor, and he was actually for many years the lead forensic psychologist for the Department of Corrections in Texas. With the Department of Corrections, he was a criminologist and a prison psychologist, actually. Dr. Ferrara's work, you can look up, but the main aspect is applying this kind of understanding, which mostly deals with criminal behavior, to all misbehavior. And in so doing, I think it's extremely important for all humans to understand this aspect of behavioral psychology, because every human being is capable of misbehavior. Every single human being deals with things along the different stages of the different stairs of the stair step. So the stair step is a great metaphor for what's going on in people's day-to-day lives. And as things happen day by day, it could happen within the span of a couple of minutes, or over the span of a couple of months, or a couple of minutes. So in the stair step, something happens to you. It could be a positive thing, or it could be a negative thing. You get a raise, or you suspect your wife is cheating on you. It could be a myriad of things. And no matter what happens, the second stage is always how you react to that thing. And it's always how you react to that thing with what you're thinking. So essentially, when we're talking about misbehavior, the second stage is negative thinking. In some sort of way, there are all these thinking errors. There's multiple ways to think of things in ways that are flawed. It could be mind reading, or blaming or justifying. Mind reading where you're not looking for the pin, as Cartier would say, that nobody's evil. You just have to look for the pin that, if somebody's acting poorly towards you, there's a reason why. But this is precisely the step which leads to a lot of negative human behavior. It could be any one of many different thinking errors, which I'll make another video on thinking errors. And I'll put the link down below at some point. But the major issue is that the next step then becomes unpleasant emotions. So some people have some unpleasant emotions about what their negative thoughts, and this negative thinking, it brings about an air of negativity. It makes people feel sad, or, if it's helplessness, it makes people feel frustrated, out of control, depressed. Any one of a lot of negative thoughts that lead to unpleasant emotions, anger. And beyond that, the next stage that comes out is that people start to fantasize to escape the unpleasant emotions. And mind you, the fantasy doesn't have to be sexual. Most times it's something like, people escape by thinking about winning the lottery, or having their own private island, or, getting lost in this beautiful woods, or having some sort of superpower. Psychology 101, everyone wants to be in power, and everyone wants to believe that they're in control of at the very least their own lives. And if you've experienced being out of control, you felt helpless. If you had a loved one in the hospital, you couldn't do anything for them, that could be a very terrible feeling. And that could very much so exemplify the feeling of helplessness, because there's nothing that you could really do. And you have to leave it to the hands of much more capable doctor and nurses and healthcare professionals. So a human being fantasizes to get out of this unpleasant emotion. And when they fantasize, they always feel in control, and it always feels good. Whatever they do, they have power, they have control, and they feel good. And this is a fantastic aspect in terms of human misbehavior. I could give you the example of somebody who just, could be very fast fantasy. It doesn't have to be some sort of lead up. It could just be somebody is having an argument with their boyfriend, or they're mind reading. Their boyfriend changed the password on their phone, and they're not allowing them to read the texts. So they're suspecting them of cheating. So this lady, she has the fantasy of just grabbing her boyfriend's phone and just smashing it. That's her fantasy. And in that fantasy, she has power and control over. If I can't read your text, and neither can you. There's some kind of power and control over the situation, and it felt good. It feels good in the fantasy to do it, to smash her boyfriend's phone. Um, so that would be the fantasy. The vision of just grabbing his phone and smashing it, and that can all happen within just 20 seconds or something. Um, and that could really depict how fantasy can then lead to like an act, to a harmful act, to a misbehavior, because right after this fantasy, usually there's a plan. But the plan can take a couple of seconds. It doesn't have to be something that has blueprints and takes place over coffee, over a couple of months or something. Um, and it's after doing that, after, let's say, somebody smashes their boyfriend's phone or whatever, they kind of realize, well, oh dear, this didn't really give me as much power and control as I thought it would. Like, fuck, it's my boyfriend, and now he has to pay for a new phone, and that I just act like a petulant child. I mean, that could lead to a lot of negative thoughts themselves, or be triggers in themselves. So it could be very cyclical. It could become its own trigger and have its own cycle of misbehavior. Its own way down the stage of another stair step for misbehavior. So the stair step could be simple, or it could be long term. I mean, it could be very complex in terms of the negative thoughts that are happening, and the thinking errors, and the unpleasant emotions, and the fantasies and plans. But so it's the second stage of the stair step where people should just check out. But it's usually the negative thinking. But it's usually not until the third stage, the unpleasant emotions, where it's the best time for you to notice. Because when you feel those unpleasant emotions, you're gonna know, damn, I feel pretty angry, or I feel really sad, or I feel upset. Why do I feel upset? What's going on? And I'll kind of go into that with my thinking errors video about how you can really ask yourself some questions. Is there any proof for this? The way I'm thinking, kind of give yourself a reality check. Am I really? And I'll even do a whole video on thought control mechanisms, because those can be very helpful too. So it's not just about identifying the thinking errors that lead to the negative thinking, that lead to the unpleasant emotion, but it's also about the thought control techniques that could also be quite helpful, and that really is the root of all misbehavior, just that stair step.